Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I'll still wait, even though I've started recording it. There's still this, this time change doesn't help. At least you can watch the sunset when it was earlier, but now it's just dark. Oh, well. So maybe I should pin myself here and go back to gallery. Okay. Oh, what's that? Cancel. 3 more classes after this. Final prep, final review. Yay. Hey, Alec. Hey, does anybody know who Jackson Brown is?
Yep.
Who said that, Alec?
Yeah. The musician, right?
Yeah.
Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah. So he's my age. So he's an old musician, like Dylan and the Beatles, but he's from California. And so he's always kind of had a local tinge to him. But I saw him, he plays Santa Barbara every few years. I saw him, I think 5 years ago. But he was on Austin City Limits last night on TV. It was so great to see him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, really great. He's changed. He's getting old. He looks more like me now than he used to.
Oh, there he goes. Woo, it works.
Hey!
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So he's kept his youth over the years, but he's still, he was great. He could sing. He can sing better than Dylan can sing. God. Of course, he's
Dylan
younger.
Can't sing anymore.
Oh, man, I went to the concert a couple of years ago just because I hadn't never been to a Dylan concert, and he couldn't sing at all. He had no voice left.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing. But, it was.
You got to go going. Just to go, while he's still alive and kicking.
That's what it was,
Didn't he sell the rights to his music now, though?
I don't know. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah,
I think he sold recently.
Music.
Really?
Yeah, he sold his whole catalog.
He's our only Nobel Prize winning musician. I've been listening, I've got a program, I can listen to old music, and God, he made so many hits over the years. Jeez. Unbelievable. For a person my age, he was like, well, the Beatles too, but even more so Dylan was really the main person for a long time. Anyway, Jackson Brown was good. It was good to see him. He can still sing pretty much, but when you can't sing like Dylan and some of the others, it's stupid to go out and tour, I guess when those guys do it for a whole lifetime, that's just what they know how to do. They'd probably feel weird if they didn't tour part of the year.
I saw Brian Wilson a few years ago at the Bowl.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even play piano anymore. He just sits in front of the piano and taps on his legs and barely sings.
He sings, yeah.
Barely. Yeah. But he's an interesting guy.
Does he appear alone or with the Beach Boys?
He doesn't appear with the Beach Boys anymore. He just does his own solo thing with his own band.
Yeah.
But they did a Pet Sounds anniversary tour, and they stopped at the Bowl.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was kind of the same thing. Got to see him while he's around. So.
Right. Right. Well, the thing about Jackson Brown, it was on Austin City Limits, in Austin, and I don't know if the musicians were his latest band. He's always got a new band, he goes through guitar players, but boy, he had some fantastic musicians. God, he had a lap steel guitar and a regular electric guitar, and they were just incredible players. It was worth it just to hear those guys.
Nice.
They might have been they look like they were cowboys from Texas, but it's hard to tell. Oh God, I guess we should talk about building at some point, huh? Hey, Louis, I know what I wanted to ask you. What's the latest on your project?
Which one?
Oh, I mean the one with Rodney.
It's going. We've got the foundation all set, and I think on Tuesday, we're gonna cut and router
Oh yeah,
the wood. So hopefully Saturday we'll
Yeah.
be meeting on campus to assemble it all.
he came over to my house this week to go over the roofing stuff.
That's what he said. He said, I asked how your kitchen was. He said it was a mess.
That isn't what he told me. He told me it looked
Oh,
great.
okay.
It is a mess, you know. The house is a mess. The kitchen's fine.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get it done by the end of the semester. We
Yeah.
started digging the rain basin and
Well,
we
if you
did
cut
our
the-
sewer
you know-
connection.
You know, if you cut the members at school, then that'll really speed things up, you know.
At
Then
Wake.
you- Yeah,
Yeah, and then we're gonna drive it all over in James's truck.
yeah. Oh, great. Yeah, I did that with the, we used, did we use James's truck? He helped anyway when we did the preschool pergola. We did that similar thing. Okay, so tonight, I don't know if we'll get to everything. There's a lot. We'll just see when we get bored and tired. But I want to talk about the code requirements because building performance in California anyway is driven by the code. And then we'll look at maybe at building performance agencies, although next week we're going to talk about careers in building performance. So I'll save that for last. We may want to look at that next week with the careers because the agencies are the ones that have the work. So we could put those together. So we'll see. And then I've got just a little short slideshow on electrification. It was a slideshow put together for real estate agents because they have to sell electrification, you know, and so it's pretty good because they broke it down into really simple arguments that they could talk to their clients about. I mean, we're going that way. So, you know, every level of people involved in house sales and construction have to all be on the same page. So anyway, the code, I looked at the energy code and the built green. Well, I got a Cal green thing, and none of them had a weather zone map. So I looked one up, and we're gonna start by looking at that. If I can find it here. Okay, can everybody see this map?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So, I mean, we could spend a whole night on this map. It's really interesting, I think, but we won't. But it has the major cities in each area. But it's a climate zone map. So the climate's similar in places that go a long way. Like, look at 16 Mount Shasta, which is probably right around here. But this whole area, all the way down to what's 14, to the desert, the upper Mojave, is all that same zone. That's pretty amazing, huh? So this is Eastern Sahara Sierras, and you know Owens Valley and all that. It's kind of interesting. Arcata, that's your redwood zone. Santa Rosa's your gentrification from San Francisco zone. What's 11? 11's Red Bluff. That's probably got what's the volcano below Shasta? Lassen? Probably Lassen's in there. 12 would be Sacramento. That's where Mike is. 13 is Fresno, and then 14 is China Lake. So that's all of Upper Mojave. 15 is El Centro, which is really down here, but this part of California is similar to it. And then, but to get down to 3 must be Oakland. But look at Oakland covers Big Sur, goes all the way down. 4 is Sunnyvale, so that's not quite on the coast, kind of where Route 101 goes through. And 5, of course, is Santa Maria, and that's probably got San Luis Obispo in there too. We're 6 down here, so we're actually along here, obviously, but the same zone extends down almost to San Diego. It's that whole coastal Southern Cal zone. 9 is what? Pasadena, so that's where the foothills kind of hit. 8 is El Toro, so that's kind of a east of Irvine area. 10 is Riverside County. 7 is San Diego. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how the zones kind of stretch. Anyway, ours is 6, so we have to remember that because the energy code is structured according to zones. So someone living up here in Shasta, where it's cold and snowy a lot of the year, is obviously going to have different energy standards than someone in Santa Barbara or San Diego. So they'll tell in that code, in the building code, they'll say, if you live in these zones, this is what you got to do. If you live in these zones, this is what you got to do. So let's keep 6 in mind. Okay, and then let's go to, I didn't want to do it in this order, but I'm going to. So this is a slideshow like we've been looking at. 3C Ren does this one also. And it's not very long. And we may not look at much of it because, well, yeah, we'll look at some. But next semester, a lot of this stuff's more relevant to next semester. You know, green building has building performance in it, but not everything uses building performance or building science. Some of the green buildings, you know, got other things in it. So, but they call, anyway, here, what I want to do is show you this slide here, Title 24. So Title 24 is just a legislative number or title for a bill that was passed. So they just call it 24 to keep track of it. And it's the building code. So whenever someone says Title 24, they really just mean the California Building Code. And it's got 12 parts to it. It's got an administrative code, which only a total masochist would read. It's got the building code, which is where you find out, you know, your stair-step riser limits and everything to do with building. It's got an electrical code for the electricians, everything to do with electrical. HVAC would be in mechanical code, plumbing code, and then they've always had an energy. No, they haven't had an energy code. This is relatively new, and we're going to look at this today because a lot of building performance and building science has to do with energy. So we're going to look at that, and then part 7 is vacant. They're going to add something there someday. This is interesting to me. They've got a whole part on California Historical Building Code. So there's a whole bunch of restrictions on what you can do with buildings that are designated historical buildings. So that's kind of interesting. And, you know, California is not a real old state as it goes, right? You know, the country was founded hundreds of years before. So we don't really have old buildings like Massachusetts and Virginia have, but they still want to preserve them and take care of them. So it's kind of cool. Fire code is a big one. Existing building code, I don't know what that is. And then 11 is the what's called Cal Green. That's its nickname. and it's the California Green Building Standards. So when sustainability reached a critical mass, they said, well, we got to create an energy code all by itself to deal with all the energy issues, insulation, that building shells, tightness. And then we got to deal with all the other standards, VOC standards, and everything else to do with green building. So these 6 and 11 were added, and 11 is called Cal Green because it's green standards. But a lot of your green standards are also in the energy code. Is that clear enough for you guys? Yes. Hello?
Wait, so what are you saying is the difference?
Can you see this slide? First of all,
Yes.
okay, good. So this is just the whole California Building Code. They call it Title 24. That's its legislative name. And then it's got 2 new versions. Maybe, I don't know, there's a history, maybe it'll tell. Cal Green was started in 2009. So it's, what's that, 11, 12 years ago. This was added 12 years ago, and it's about sustainability standards. They call it Cal Green for short. And then the energy code, I don't know if that was there before, but it's certainly been upgraded because most of the sustainability stuff, I mean, a lot of it involves energy. So these are 2 sections that concern this class and next semester's class. But does that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, as builders, carpenters, people are going to talk to you about this one way, from one direction or another. It's good to have a little orientation about it. So let's save the Cal Green part. Let's go through it while we're here. So both codes, all codes that you saw there, every chapter is divided up into residential and non-residential. And the residential has low height. I forget how they call it, but it's like 1 or 2 story residential. In Asia and most of the world, residential are giant buildings that are 10 to 20 stories high, right? Big part of the world lives in there as residences. So they have a wholly different code. So they'll be called residential, but it'll have something like high rise residential. And then non-residential is commercial buildings. And so they have different code standards. See, here's mid-rise, high-rise housing. So that's different than low-rise housing, which is what we have mostly in Santa Barbara. They have a lot of things. The government's obsessed with trying to get everybody to understand this. One way they could help is to write decent code books, which they've never been able to do. But they try to make up for that by having all these reference things. Like we looked at some for the, what do you call it? The air changes, right? Minimum ventilation values. Yeah. So, okay, why am I echoing in there?
Is somebody not muted and it's playing through their speakers?
Might be me. Sorry.
Okay. So in this chapter 11 of the code on green building, they have a planning and design. We'll just run through this real quick because I'm going to take more time with this next semester. They have energy efficiency, obviously. But they also have water efficiency, right? Because in California, that's a huge issue. And then they have material conservation and resource efficiency, which is also a great thing to have. And then they have environmental quality, which is indoor and outdoor air quality mostly, but it could be water quality too. So this is kind of this slideshow kind of tells you what's in each of these chapters or divisions. Planning and design is just talking about best practices, things like stormwater drainage and retention during construction. Now, we've talked about that in this class minimally. We had a water management unit that we did. And but the place you'd go to find out the government restrictions on that and how they want you to manage water. First of all, we don't have a lot of water, so they don't want you to let it just go everywhere. And then they want you to prevent erosion, obviously. So they have things for that. We won't go into the details. I'm just giving you an overview here. Stormwater practices for dealing with stormwater. Stormwater during construction, that's an interesting thing. And there's temporary things you need to do if you live in an area that's going to rain, and construction takes months, sometimes years to do. So you want to make sure you're prepared when the heavy rain season comes in your area. Grading and paving.
Like wattles?
Yeah, like wattles and all kinds of stuff, temporary swales, sandbags, all kinds of stuff. These are more permanent structures to have in your yards. And we've talked about this a little bit, rain gardens and swales and French drains. And then there's, of course, grading and paving. There's things to know about. So, conserving water. A lot of grading and paving now is to conserve water. Get it down to the water table. Bicycle parking, there's a new category, huh? So, there actually are laws about bike parking, because we're trying to promote bicycle riding. So if you don't have places where people can lock up and protect their bikes, they won't do it. So the county, if you across from the courthouse there where the county building is, they have it's a screened in, it's like 15 feet high, and it's got wire fencing on all sides, and every county person has a key, or it goes back and forth between combination and key, and they can go in there and park their bike in there. Because like my electric bike, for instance, is pretty expensive, and I don't want someone ripping it off. So I wouldn't drive it to work, ride it to work, unless I could be certain it was secure. When I taught at UCSB and rode it, I'd bring it into my office, down the hallway and into my office. But so now they're saying, you have to actually have places for people. So that's great. So they have to have parking. Santa Barbara City College has parking, and they even have, fix-it shops, right, on campus, little sheds to help you with if your bike gets broken. So here's kind of a screened-in thing like I have at the county. They have racks that have locks on them. So that's important. And same with the electric vehicle charging. We're trying to encourage people to ride bikes for many reasons, but vehicles are to cut down on fossil fuels. So got to make sure we have a lot of these EV charging things. So this is the kind of thing that's in that green, Cal Green section of the code. Light pollution. There's a whole thing about the more powerful lights we've gotten in modern times, it bugs the neighbor. You can have a light that shines right into the neighbor's home. We just had a squawk about that in our community, and we had to address it as a board. And we had to obey the laws. We had to look up what the civil code said about, light things. And so energy efficiency must comply with Part 6. So that's what they have to say about that. So which is what I thought. Why duplicate it? So, but water efficiency is a good thing. So, you guys will have this slideshow on this recording. You might want to keep some of those recordings that have fact sheets, information on them, because if you want to get it on the current code requirements for water and things, this is a really concise, it's much better than the code, concise way to find that stuff. So it tells what kind of plumbing stuff,
Patrick, are you making this available on Canvas?
Well, it's in the recording of this class, which is on Canvas. I can make this, you want me to put all the
Can you post
slideshows
the
we've done?
slideshow file?
I'll make a slideshow file and put it on.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
everybody. Okay. Okay, we'll do. Let me write that down. Yeah, the 3C Ren group has done a lot of, they're actually boring to listen to because they go on and you don't want to know a lot about every area. So with a slideshow, you can just whip through things and not, get overwhelmed just looking for what you want. So look at this, interesting. They have guidelines for food waste disposers. They have to have an auto shut off after 10 minutes. Otherwise, they'll burn the engine, maybe cause a fire, probably. Interesting, huh? So, model water efficient landscape ordinance, outdoor potable water, recycled water. Okay, resource efficiency. Well, that's funny. Material conservation and resource. So are they considering rodents resource to be protected? No, it's what the rodents eat, right? So weather protection, moisture control, construction waste, at least 65%. Yeah, right. Okay. Operation and maintenance manual. A final inspection of a house now you have to have a homeowner's maintenance and operation manual, because we've got so much building science, building performance equipment and houses now, that if you sell a house, the next person that buys a house has to know how to deal with all that stuff. So you have to have a manual, and it has to have at least 10 subjects. Because otherwise you lose these green home benefits.
Or like a car or a truck manual, but for a house.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt all along for the last 10 years they've recommended this, that people should build actually a room or a separate section in their house and have, there's a lot of stuff in a house people have. It's not just, we've got a lot of more electronics now than we used to, and they could have quirky things about the electrical system. Because how many times have you gone into your electrical panel in your garage and seen something marked for bedroom, turned it off, and it turns off the kitchen instead? And so there's just a lot of things to keep track of. Rain, when it rains, what can be done? And I think, to be really smart, we should have a location in the house that has these things. It could be just a part of an office or a part of a, mudroom or something. And then people would know where to go. I mean, it's one thing to have this manual. You got to make sure it gets into the hands of the people buying your house. That could be a problem in itself. Recycling, environmental quality. Oh yeah, okay. So this is like combustion air. Yeah, adhesive. This is like VOCs. And a list of the minimum requirements for maximum VOC and toxins and various things. Carpets, got regulations on carpets. I mean, it used to be they made carpets with the cheapest materials, so they would have cheap carpets because a lot of people can't afford expensive carpets. This was when everybody was using carpets. But the poor people who couldn't afford good carpets had to breathe all that, what's the stuff? Come on, you guys, help me out. The stuff that's in carpets, and it's got to be listed here somewhere.
It ends in like azine or something.
No, it's I'm just drawing a blank. It'll come to me in a second. It should be listed on here because it's one of the things they, the glue they have and stuff. That's funny. It's not listed anywhere. So look at this, goes on and on, right? So it doesn't deal with energy, but it does deal with some electronics because you have to have ventilation and
Are you
exhaust.
talking about tooling? Are you talking about tooling? Or the glue that
Yeah.
it's like toluene or something? Tooling. I just
No,
looked it up.
that's one of them. Yeah, but it's the thing that's in used to be in the fiber board that people use, and
Is it benzene?
no, it's a real common name. You'll laugh when I get to it. But I appreciate you trying. Everybody else knows it. They're just spaced out like me.
You're not asking about formaldehyde, are you?
I am, yes.
Oh,
Thank
formaldehyde.
you.
Oh shit.
Yeah. Hey, listen, don't ever think it's a stupid question. Just throw it out there because you're probably right. Yeah, formaldehyde. So it's funny they didn't mention it in all the toxic and VOC talk here, but it's usually the first thing they mention. And it hasn't gone away. They've gone to the better formaldehyde, the not the urea, but the other one. But it's still not great. Okay, I think you got the drift of that, right? What's on there? One thing they have on at the end of all these codes is a section called voluntary tiers. And also they have reach codes. Reach codes, like to reach for something, those are codes where the local jurisdiction is more stringent than the state code. And so reach codes you'll have to go by, so you have to know those. And then voluntary tiers, there's credit for certain programs, like if you're doing a lead house or a built green, which we'll look at a little bit tonight, or a Energy Star, you can get credit for some of these voluntary retirement requirements or possibilities.
Is a reach code like across the street from the Rose Gardens where all the houses have to be the same color?
Yeah, that's probably a reach code, but it could be as it could be something like a difference in the maximum allowance for a stair riser. Like they've come down. The state's like, I don't know, 7.25. They change it. I don't know. And local, they could say, well, no, we want it 7. We want it even less. And so you'd have to know that, right? You have to know if it's different. Okay. So we're going to get out of that. We're going to talk a lot more about those things in the next class. Just wanted to show you that in chapter or section of division 11 of the building code, title 24, is all green building. So it's a more bureaucratic way of listing all these requirements here. These people have put it into a fairly easy to read slideshow, so it's great. But we are going to look at the actual chapter 6 of the code, which is the energy efficiency, and then you'll see what the code looks like. I mean, some of you already know, but so where would that be? Oh yeah, okay, so I need to go to blah, 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 Google. Give me a second to get this thing. Okay, do you see this California Energy Commission?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is on the internet, and if I can get rid of this thing. It's energy.ca.gov. That's pretty simple, right? So write that down, energy.ca.gov. So one of the things we want to talk about tonight, and we will do it some, is building performance agencies, all the government and private agencies that are involved with building performance, just to give you an idea of how involved it is now in our lives. And one of the things you need to know about is the California Energy Commission. So let's see if there's a definition of it somewhere. Well, I'll find it somewhere. But this California Energy Commission is it's a state organization. The public's involved with it to an extent. Probably their board has mixed, bureaucrats and citizens, and it controls all the energy requirements for the state. So it's a huge agency you should know about. And this page has a lot of really great links. So if we go to programs and topics, all programs, it'll list all programs that have to do with energy in the state. So we're just going to scan through these, but look at how many there are. This one's a lighting control standard agency. This one's for appliances. This one's for school lighting. This one's for benchmarking energy data, energy use data. This one's a Title 24. We'll look at this one in a second. The energy part, which was chapter 7, what I say, 7? No, 6. Here's Building Initiative for Low Emissions Development Program. So this is probably a private public thing, helping do low emissions housing and things. California Schools, Healthy Air, Plumbing, and Efficiency. California Vehicle Grid Integration Roadmap. So we have an agency that's keeping track of all the vehicle electrification stations, right? And it'll be hydrogen fuel cells also. So somebody has to keep track of that and promote that. Clean Transportation Program, Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, energy efficiency in existing buildings, energy vehicle charging infrastructure assessment, energy system infrastructure planning. So California, since we're in the forefront of solar and wind, and vehicle, keeping vehicle emissions down, we have probably a lot more agencies than your average state. But I mean, look at geothermal grant and loan program, natural gas program, reducing impacts to birds, bats from wind energy. It's important, as weird as it is. So these are just some of the programs that the state of California has going. A tribal program that helps out tribes with, helping them get energy, be aware of all these programs. Sometimes reservations get pretty isolated and they don't know of all the things they can get, unfortunately. So this helps them. So there's just a lot of stuff going on, a lot of programs for energy efficiency and sustainability. So then if we go to rules and regulations, building energy efficiency. Let's go to this one, building energy efficiency standards. I know the government's never, it's never a short path on a government website. So here's an interesting thing. Building energy efficiency standards, Title 24, Section 6. We're going to look at the 2019 building energy efficiency standards, but look at the list to 2022, which is the next time it's coming out. Let's see what they've got there. So this is like a preview, and they do this in each Title 24 edition, like 219. They will talk about what's coming up, so it gives people kind of a heads up where we're headed. Oh, here we go. 2022 Building Energy Efficiency Standards Summary. Okay, folks, here's what we're in for. And these don't take place till, I believe, 2023, the January after they come out. So we've got, what, 2 years? What's new for 2022? Okay, interestingly enough, encouraging electric heat pump technology. So did we not look at heat pump technology a couple of times? So that's coming up. I mean, you know, the code's gonna be requiring this pretty soon. When you don't have gas, which we're quickly getting away from, you can get, you know, that we've made electrical water heaters and electrical ranges for a long time, but they're very inefficient. You know, they waste a lot of energy. They're more expensive to operate. That's why people go with gas. But now that we can't have gas, they've created new, with the heat pump concept, they've created new hot water heaters and house heaters and coolers, air conditioning, and ranges that deal with this. Well, the range doesn't. The range has that magnetic, so it's a similar new, I mean, it's a parallel new technology. So the state's starting to encourage that because that's what's going to replace the gas.
Patrick,
Yes.
what happens to the gas infrastructure that's already in place?
Well, that's a great question, and I have not thought about that yet. So, you know, it's gonna, I mean, we don't have to think about that yet because the renewable energies are still not anywhere near what we need to replace the gas. We're heading that way and we're encouraging it, but it's still, we've still got a number of years, so that won't be touched. But eventually it's going to just be disused, you know, taken apart. It's a lot of piping, right? Think of the piping that goes from gas plants to homes. The whole country is covered by this web network of gas pipes. That's all going to be gone because we're not going back. You know, it's not like, let's leave them in place because the electrical may not work out. Global warming demands that we go electrical. So that's just not in any of our lifetimes. That we've already crossed that river and we've made that decision. No more gas, no more fossil fuel. So, you know, eventually, I mean, I guess you can just leave everything in place, but anything that's worth recovering for resource, you know, like pipes that they can reuse, steel pipes they can recycle. That's probably what'll happen. Expanding solar voltaic and battery storage standards. So we're increasing that as we go. Storage is really becoming a thing. It's still pretty expensive. I'm getting a new set of PV panels on my home because I'm electrifying it and I'm getting rid of the gas slowly. I'm starting with a gas range, and I'll get a heat pump water tank as soon as this one has a little more wear on it. This one's not that old, so I want to get a little bit of my money out of it, and then I'll switch over to that. I'll probably get a electric dryer eventually. But I looked in the battery this time because, and we're gonna get an electric vehicle. We just got a not even a hybrid. We just got a Honda Civic, which is very economical, but it's still a internal combustion engine. And
What do you think about the Ford F-150 all electric?
yeah, so we're going to go all electric car in a couple of years. The price will be better. Rodney's getting a VW, right? From Wolfsburg, from Germany. And I'm dying. Maybe he'll bring it by school. I'm dying to see it.
Do you think
40
the pickup trucks are going to be a thing in the construction industry, like the all electric ones?
Yeah. Yeah. So Rodney's car is 40,000. I don't want to spend that. Although Rodney buys used cars like that, that Lexus he's got, he only spent 10,000 for it. That black car he drives. If you ever seen it, that's a nice car. But yeah, but I saw the plan for, I got a book on energy, which I'll share with you next semester. It's about an entrepreneur that's really concerned that we're not going fast enough, and he's really laying down the law. It's really good. And he was saying that Tesla had a whole plan. First, they're going to do the flashy model, right, to get wealthy people interested. Then they're going to do the middle class car to get the upper middle class that can afford it. That's the one that's out now, the S series, I guess it's called. And then he's going to go for a plebeian car for the rest of us. That'll be the last move. That's when I'm going to get one. Hopefully it'll be soon. But then I have to be able to charge it at home. So we're getting more electric. We don't use a lot now, but we have just enough for what we have. So if we change over to electric and have an electric car, we're going to need more. So we're kind of heading toward that. But we're going to have to look. Well, we may look in battery. But what I was going to say was, for my system, it was like the rebates are great now. And it was like an $8,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 system. They wanted $20,000 for a Tesla battery pack. $20,000, who can afford that? So I said, well, wait, those will come down too. They're relatively new, but, we don't have that many blackouts. So I'm not, it's not too urgent to do that now, but eventually when they get battery storage down at a price ordinary people can afford, then they'll start jumping. But all that will affect the grid. When I was in Germany a few years ago on a city college tour of energy efficiency and sustainable energy, we went to a lot of German universities in the Frankfurt area. Boy, they're working on this stuff, right? They're working on how the grid will have to be altered step by step. Germans they're great at that kind of thinking, that system organizing thinking. And boy, they're I don't know if we're putting that much energy into it. Probably our universities are. But the energy is such a huge thing and such an important part of economies. They've got to coordinate all this, right? You just can't cut off an energy premature unless you're sure it can back up. And then you have new systems that, transmit the energy. It's a really involved thing. It's huge. You can imagine. So, and we're right in the middle of it now. We're at the beginning actually, but we're right into it. So all that stuff has to be coordinated. And then the last one is strengthening ventilation standard. And, they just found out, they're trying. What's interesting is when we look at this real estate thing on electrification, to encourage electrical use, they're kind of downgrading gas use. And they're talking about all the fumes that all of us are breathing when we have normal gas appliances, which is all of us. And it's kind of weird that all of a sudden now they're talking a lot about, all the stuff we're breathing with that. I thought that was kind of weird. But, it's politics. They've got to get people to want to electrify. So this is interesting. This is all stuff we've talked about, a lot of it. But this is what's coming. They're just giving you a heads up. So when you see the restriction and the standard in 3 years, you won't panic because you'll have had some exposure to it. So that's kind of a cool thing they do. Is give the next where they're headed. They used to do it at the end of those two sections, 6 and 11, and they would have like voluntary measures, and then the voluntary measures would be what they were going to do with the next code. It was voluntary now, and they're mentioning it, but in the next code, it's going to be mandatory. So everybody quickly read those and go, oh, we're headed that way. So then we'll go to the current building standards. And they have compliance forms because the paperwork's a lot more involved now for project permits, you know. And and we're going to look at this. There's two kinds of ways you can design a project. You can do it by what's the word? Damn it. Efficient. You can do it by current standards. There's another word for that. Or you can do a performative thing, how your house performs equal to those standards, but because that means you're doing some kind of alternate energy, you know, heating or some kind of alternate system, you have to have that system, the performance of that tested so that building department knows that it's equivalent to the standards, the regular standards. If I had half a brain, I'd remember that word. We'll find it. It's coming right up. So that's what these compliance forms are and worksheets. And they have, if you do the alternate, the performative way, then they have software that's approved. They have a whole list of software that you can use, and they'll send you one version free. And a lot of companies have their own, they probably like better. And that will do all the software calculations for this alternative energy use. So you can do it on a computer and, you know, show how you're, you know, plug in the data from what you're doing and show how it complies. So that's becoming, if some of you are interested in computer work, the whole building permitting and you know, approval activities, all software now, and you could combine that with your building interest. So we'll talk about that next week on building performance careers, but that's one of them because software is here to stay in the building standards world. So let's go to the standards and compliance manuals. Okay, I guess these are mandatory for residential and non. So what the code usually does is it starts with standards, whether it's building efficiency or plumbing or electrical or whatever. For residential and non-residential, that means everybody has to accrue to those standards. Then they separate it out and they go to just residential standards. And then they'll have one for commercial standards. So let's go to that one. You know, see, this is an example of how it's written. You know, this is a government website, the CEC. And okay, so here's what I'm saying. This is, when I went to 2019 Building Energy Efficiency Standards, this is the selection I got. This is the submenu. This is hard to read. I just want the code. Which one of these is going to give me the code? So I'm going to go with this one because it looks like the rest of Title 24. But then it says documents, commission final report. It doesn't say building code or anything like that. So you just gotta kind of know these things. Now, see, building energy efficiency standards. This looks like a building code page, right? So that's part of the problem. But that's why I'm doing this to you. I mean, with you, because once you realize that there's a way to maneuver through these things, it's not so hard. So you got to go through all the, so let's go to the table of contents. there's always regulation, there's scope, definitions. Most builders know most of these definitions. If you don't know them, you can always go back to this early page and get them. But we want to skip that section and go down to all occupancies, general provisions. So that's the one that's for whether it's a commercial, high-rise residential or low-rise residential. So, and then the chapter 2 will be same thing, all occupancies and mandatory requirements. So that's what we want. Let's see what's under this general provisions. I think it's a lot of HVAC stuff, but. So what the building code does, and a lot of you have looked at these building codes over the years, but they'll have a section and they'll have, buildings covered, tells you what kind of buildings. And then what they do is they have an exception section. And often what you want is under one of these exceptions. In fact, almost inevitably, if you look at the regular building code, the construction part, and you read this part first and it doesn't make any sense. And it gives you wrong information because the exceptions are usually the larger area, the more applicable area. So then when you go to an exception, it says, oh, don't listen to any of this, pay attention to this. So it gets confusing that way. So this is kind of this is the really general stuff. So it's got some definitions, habitable stories, got a little bit on outdoor lighting and signs. This is kind of a grab all. Oh yeah, here we go. So it says for low-rise residential buildings, these are the compliance approaches. So compliance means to comply to the code, law, or standard, right? Everybody know that word compliance? You have to comply to this standard. This is a very bureaucratic term, but it's used, so you got to know it. So there's 2 approaches for complying with the code in part 6, which is the energy one we're looking at. And it says mandatory measures. This is just not organized well. As a writer and as an English teacher, I cannot believe they can't do better. Anyway, these are the 2 approaches. Performance approach, which I talked about. Prescriptive is the other one. Why can't I remember? Because the word's not an ordinary word, right? So these are your choices. Prescriptive means in this weather zone, in the wall, you have to have R20. It prescribes what the law requires. That's what prescriptive approach. That was the old code. And it's still that way because a lot of people don't use alternative energy systems. And so they have no reason to do a performance. The reason they can't put a prescriptive for all these new systems because they don't, it's not like just putting more insulation in. It's got all kinds of other things. So they can't prescribe it. There's too many alternatives and variations. So they say, okay, we have to allow this. And some of these approaches are actually better. But the way we're going to figure out whether you're complying with standards is if it performs the same way. So then you have to have someone come in and evaluate the performance. You can do it with a software program. You can have a HERS rater, do an on-site verification if it's something that's going to be covered up. So it's much more complicated, but these performative approaches are some of the better sustainable things we've come up with. So, that's the way it is. So has everybody got that performance approach and prescriptive approach? Do I hear a resounding yes out there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so this might be a question on the final. What's the difference between prescriptive and performance approach? So prescriptive means what's prescribed by the old code or the existing code. You have to have so much R value in your walls. Performance means, well, if I don't have that R value, but I have a super tight house with a visqueen vapor barrier that doesn't let out any air, that could perform the same way as having that extra insulation. So performance means they Then they can either test the performance at the end of the house, the blower door test. Some things require a test at the beginning and a test at the end, or they can do it by a software program. And you just punch in the volumes and all the appropriate data, and the software program says, oh yeah, that totally is equivalent to an R20 wall. So those are the two processes we have for compliance now. Okay. So you see how that's kind of a grab bag, that first section. So I'm gonna skip this. Oh shit. We want to go to, sorry. All occupancy general provisions, that's where we're at. Let's go to mandatory requirements. So this, yeah. Okay, so systems and equipment. So this applies more to commercial things because it's, dishwashing, huge dishwashing machines, commercial level appliances. So this doesn't have a lot of, for a normal middle class residents, this is stuff that's way beyond. It's more like for restaurants and things. It says for everybody. And if your building comes under one of these, you would have to do it. But again, it's minimum efficiency requirements for heat pumps. So if you had a ground source heat mode, or a water source, you had a heat pump that used the warmer water at the bottom of a lake, the minimum requirement would be have to supply this amount of BTUs. So, most of us don't have that kind of heat pump. Before they had heat pump appliances, heat pumps were actually coils that went into the earth and used the heating that was either in water or in underground. So the original heat pumps came from that. And now they've become a machine, a manufactured thing. So see, this has water chilling. So that's not a normal thing for a home. So let's keep going and get out of this. See what I mean about the code putting you to sleep? Or is it me? It's one of us. God, service, water, heating systems, and equipment. Yeah, that's for services. So okay, here's the word fenestration. Mandatory requirements for fenestration products and exterior doors. Yeah, you thought I was kidding about that, huh? So the bottom of this page has a little bar that tells you what it's about. We're probably still in the general standards, wouldn't you say? Oh, yeah. So here's for your windows, because that's an energy stopping device, a window. This has frame type and the type of window, the glazing, and the solar heat gain. Remember we talked about that? So this tells what values, minimum values you have to have for your windows by code. And of course, the companies that sell windows all make their windows according to these. So if you're buying one, you're okay. If you're making one up, you have to satisfy those requirements somehow. Roofing, mandatory requirements for insulation, roofing products, and radiant barriers. So you might put that might be the type of shingle or the paint you put on the shingles that reflects sun. Okay, anyway, all of the residential for lighting controls, everything that has to do with energy is listed in this 2019 Building Energy Efficiency Standard, Chapter 6 of Title 24 of the Building Code. You can see it goes on and on, right? Mandatory requirements for solar-ready buildings. That's just interesting. The last code, 219, said your building has to be solar-ready. So you don't have to have solar panels, but you have to, it has to be ready to put panels on. So this tells what that means. So it's kind of, if you're into solar, that's kind of interesting to read. Non-residential. Okay, so we're getting out of residential, but we're still into high-rise residential, which is like, high-rise apartment buildings that are all over the world that way. So we're out of the low-rise residential, which is what most people in Santa Barbara live in. So the rest of this, and you can see by the right, I'm only not even halfway through this part of the code. So there's a lot to do with commercial and high-rise residential from here on out. They really need to be regulated because, the public uses those buildings in large numbers and they get more traffic and more things go wrong. If my wife manages a restaurant in town during the day, and most of it is things going wrong. Plumbing things fail, electrical things fail, freezers fail, and restaurants are highly regulated. You can't have a fish restaurant. She works at a sushi restaurant. You can't have that and have the refrigerator go out during the day and expect to still use the fish in there. It's very highly regulated, So there's plumbers that are on call for all these restaurants that can come in a second, plumbers and electricians that can fix the drainage or the water supply or, the heat and the water supply. It's pretty amazing. Okay. Now, if you guys aren't asleep at this point, there's something wrong with you. The time we got, 7 o'clock. Okay. Alex listening. Or at least he's faking it in a good way. Let's save, because I think people are tired and daylight savings is killing us. Let's save the building performance agencies for next week because, hey Jack, because we're doing careers and those all have careers attached to them. So no sense introducing them this week and then talking about the careers next week. We'll do it all in one session. We have the final prep next week, so that'll take half or a third of the class, and then the rest will cover some of these agencies and what careers are possible or potential for them. Some of you may be interested. It's really broad. It's getting broader with global warming bearing down on us, and the government's really being responsible now. And California has been responsible for a while. There's opportunity galore for every level of sustainability. So I want to make sure you guys at least get a little exposure to that. So what I got left here is, let's go through the Built Green handout, which was part of your reading for this week. And we won't do lead. We'll do lead next week. And then we'll just look at the electrification thing slideshow. It's very short that these people put on for realtors to get them to start getting the terms and the lingo for electrifying houses so they can, recommend those to clients. Probably clients are not saying, well, hey, do you have any all electric houses? I mean, there's probably 1 in 10 that are doing that, but in Santa Barbara, but the realtor's got to go, hey, have you guys considered an all electric house? Because blah, 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 10 minutes later, yeah, it's going to save the world. So it's kind of interesting. I'll just show you that. It's not very long. So let's look at the homework. And it's too small to read on your, I mean, you can maybe read it yourself, but on this sharing, it's too small to read on the handout in your Canvas. So I'll do it on the, I've got to do every one because it's unfortunately, sorry. Because it's, okay, get rid of the code. And oh, handout 13, is that it? No, there it is. Okay, so the major programs in Santa Barbara County for sustainable building, green building, are the LEED program. And so far, LEED's mostly used by commercial and public buildings. So UC Santa Barbara, for instance, has all LEED buildings. All the new buildings are all LEED. There's various levels of LEED that we'll just briefly talk about because we cover this more in the green building. This is not so much a performance thing, although, you know, any list of sustainable changes and programs and systems you can use in a house, most of them will end up being building performance type programs. So that's the relation. But anyway, so Built Green, it's part, they were started along with the under the auspices of Santa Barbara Contractors Association. So it was a bunch of contractors, Joe Campanelli. I don't think Dennis Allen was involved in it. I could be wrong. And a bunch of them got together and created this Built Green Santa Barbara, this organization. And they have a residential new construction handbook and they have a remodel handbook. And I've got copies at school. And since we're coming to school next semester, we'll look at this and I'll show you the copies. They're old copies, but I think it's still. And what they have is a checklist. And what you can do for both LEED and Built Green is that, and every locale has their version of Built Green. The Bay Area, I forget what it's called, but they have the same thing, and every region has theirs. So Santa Barbara's is Built Green, and it's a checklist, and you add up points, and the total of the points will indicate the level of green construction you're doing. You know, it's like LEED has platinum and gold and silver and all that categories. You know, from pretty good sustainability to excellent sustainability. Same thing with Built Green, a smaller version. And so you add up all the things, you pay money to do it, and then you have a house that's documented as having these green features. So it would work as a marketing thing for people that are interested in sustainability, and it also is great for contractors who want to be green contractors. They can say that they use the Built Green or the LEED program, and so you're sure that they're bona fide and not just giving you a raft of crap, you know. Okay, so the next one. Can you see this, or did I just lose it?
Continue.
Oh, great. Oh, great. We're in. So now, because see how small that is? So, God, I hope this is in order. Is it? I don't know. Who cares? It's not in order. We're missing. Let's see. Well, we'll go back and forth. So it has the number. That's just how you get to it, how to refer to it. Then it has points attached to it. So you get these many points or a range of points. And then this is the action items, and you add up the points for the end. So for instance, for outdoor conservation, it says You mulch your landscape beds with 3 inches of local organic mulch. You've got a small percentage of turf. If it's 0 turf, you get 10 points because they're trying to encourage low water plants. So that's just the landscaping. Indoor conservation. This is water. It looks like it's mostly water. Select faucet fixtures with gallons per minute less than code. You get a point. You get a point for shower heads that are less than code. So you see how they go point by point in all these things. Energy efficiency. It's required that you meet the California code. And then if you exceed Title 24 by 20%, you get something. I forget. Anyway, use door tests to identify and correct air infiltration problems. If your results were better than the required, the minimum air change per hour, you get 2 points. If they're quite a bit better, you get 3 points. So there's a thing called third-party verification. That means someone has to verify this besides your word. So when you get done with your fiberglass bats, someone has to go there and say, yeah, I document that they did that. Same with foam. So we'll talk later about who those third-party verifiers are. But some things need to be verified. They don't want to take your word for it. Here's a performance test duct blaster test, 3 points. So advanced wall framing, 24 inch on center instead of 16 on center. When you have what do they call the roof? What do you call the roof? The triangles that you pre-buy.
The trusses.
Trusses, thank you. If they have heels on the trusses where you can add insulation, you get a point. So, and then windows, if they're below a certain U value, you get points. So see, you add up all these points, and you get a score. Let's just go over what other categories are. We don't need to go into the details. Indoor air quality is one. These are pretty typical green building categories. Moisture control, air distribution and filtration, HVAC equipment. I don't know what these are. This is building material, not wasting building material. Section 6 is environmentally friendly homeowner operations and maintenance. So here's provide owner with homeowner's manual. So here's that thing we were talking about that they're actually requiring now. But this has been in LEED and Built Green Santa Barbara for a long time. They have that book that records all that information.
Hey, Patrick.
Yes.
If there is some sort of legal repercussions, is the liability on the contractor or the homeowner?
Well, how do you mean?
Well, like if something, so like let's say you sold your house or whatever, and then someone gets it and it's not what it says it is, I guess, or any like legal aspect, is that more on the homeowner? Because I feel like the homeowner doesn't really know what's going on. They're just the dude with the wallet, right? And then like the contract. So the contractor is the one. The contractor is the one that like knows what's happening, and I just don't know who's like liable.
Well, it would be a lawsuit, and what they would have to prove, because they'd all be contesting this, is who knew what when. So the contractor is responsible for doing a built green thing and for all the rest of the building code. But if he told the homeowner that he was skipping something or doing it under par, and he could prove it, then the homeowner would be liable.
Okay.
So yeah, so it would be one of those. It wouldn't be the built green because, they just have this checklist, and they're actually, even though there's third-party verification, a lot of it is still up to the trust of the homeowner and the contractor. So, and they've said that, so they're not liable, but it would be the contractor or the owner.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good question because that could happen.
Yeah, because I know a lot of contractors have like policies or like insurance policies to prevent against lawsuits and stuff. Like they have like lawsuit like policies, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how, you know, I've been told by lawyers that no contract's foolproof, no matter what you do. And so, I mean, it's good to have safeguards. You know, the biggest reason for safeguards and the possibility of legal action is that it costs money for everybody. Just to put on a legal activity costs everybody money. So that's a deterrent for people. They say, well, even if we win, it's going to cost us. They're not going to, depending on the particular circumstance, they're not going to reimburse us. So we're going to be out all that money for a long trial. And that will discourage a lot of people from even doing that. So that's one reason why, I mean, it's not the greatest system, but that's one thing that system serves. And in terms of insurance, it's the same thing. I mean, insurance companies argue all the time, right? They get in lawsuits all the time because they don't want to cover, because their language is often not exactly clear. And so there's this gray area, right? And well, does the hurricane coverage cover the stuff in the basement that's supposed to be hurricane proof? And the hurricane got in there for some reason. So there's always going to be differences in interpretation, because that's just the kind of people we are, unfortunately. So even insurance doesn't prevent that. It may, insurance and the legal system may deter people from, wasting their money doing it. So that's about the best part of it.
Mm-hmm. Would you say it's scary being a contractor? Like it's scary, the constant threat of lawsuits?
Yeah, you should talk to Jim and Rodney about that, because they've been contractors. I was only a contractor for the first part of my life. They've been contractors all along, and I mean, I'm advising a friend on a bathroom remodel, some you know about, and that's scary enough, because all kinds of things could go wrong. All kinds of things have gone wrong. I'm not the actual contractor, so I'm not liable for anything, but they're close friends, so I don't want them to get hurt or have to pay a lot of money. And things go wrong unbelievably. And
like with roofing,
mean,
pretty much. Like roofing's a big one, right?
Well, no, everything. They're doing a bathroom. Bathrooms and kitchens are very complicated. And the bathroom, there's just so many things that can go wrong. And I'm ending up having a contract because I had someone and that fell through. And so there was no time to get another contractor. So I said, well, I'll sort of act as contractor for you. And so it brought me back to the days when I was actually a contractor. And I thought, God, who would do this? It's so nerve-wracking, so stressful. But some people like it. That's why I want, you should talk to Jim, because Jim, Rodney's got into the real high-end contracting, and he gets these deals where he's not really liable for anything. And he can make mistakes, and he gets down on himself for making them, but he doesn't really get punished for it. But Jim,
who gets punished for him?
Well, other people.
Like the subcontractors?
Yeah, there may be subcontractors, there may be designers and stuff. But he, in his later life, he's managed to get this kind of weird advisory position where, he has a lot to do with the house being done. And Alec could probably speak a little bit of this, but but Jim is more in the trenches, and Rodney used to be more of a general contract, more of a, well, he was a cabinet contractor for a long time, but Jim would know the ins and outs of that. But the thing about Jim is Jim loves it, because when I was retiring the first time, I said, Jim, do you want to take over and be chair now? And he said, oh no, I'd rather build. I make more money building, but it's much more stressful than teaching. I mean, I think it is. Maybe it's not. I mean, teaching has its own stresses, but building, even if you're not liable for lawsuits and money, you're still liable for letting people down and making mistakes and causing problems, and that can weigh on you. That can be stressful.
Is it more rewarding though?
Pardon?
Is it more rewarding?
Well, yeah, well, that's it. See, Jim, he's a good example because I've been thinking about him lately. He really loves that kind of stress. He loves to wheel and deal and, arrange things and coordinate things. And that's just what you need to do as a contractor. So the people who like that, it's perfect. They can deal with the stress and they like that kind of choreography that's involved. I mean, I can feel a little bit of it in the jobs I'm doing, also doing my own house, the kitchen. And even though it's a small version, I can remember it takes me right back to days when I was a contractor. And there's something nice about it. There's something real inviting about, doing a million things at once, coordinating all these variables. So, yeah, I wouldn't let the fact that it's a litigious society and there's a lot of lawsuits, and I wouldn't let that discourage you from being a contractor if you like building. And because you could, it's not that big a deal to get a license and to do it for a few years, and then you can tell in those few years whether you really like it or it's not worth the stress. I mean, when I first was a contractor, I was in a Finnish company. And so things had to really look good. Framing, you can get away with a lot, but, finished carpentry and of course, drywall and painting, that's the last thing anybody sees is those trades. And so you're always stressful about the product. You always want to make sure the product's good, but it's limited to that because you're much more limited what you're doing. You're not doing a whole job like a general does. And, and I was a general contractor too for a while in Maine, but Maine's so laid back, it's a lot easier to do. Oh God, I could tell you stories about Maine, man.
Is it more laid back, chill vibes, and
it used to be when I was there. Oh yeah. Oh my God.
I thought East Coast was all like uptight and super anal.
In Maine?
Yeah, like the East Coast area.
Yeah, New England. Well,
yeah.
The East Coast is really different between New Jersey and Philadelphia on up. That's different from New York, upstate New York. Upstate New York is more like New England, Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, but they all have differences. But Maine's the most laid back, I think, of the bunch. And it might be different now, but people trusted people, and the trade was real old. The construction trade was, is one of the oldest in the country, New England. And, they just had old ways of doing things that were tried and true, and, nobody got upset. And it may be different now. Things change quickly, But the thing that saves it now is that there's such a demand for construction right now, and there will be in the rest of your lifetimes, that you can maybe use that to cut, to trade for some of the stress. I mean, literally, you might be able to get yourself in a position where you're so wanted that you can avoid the stress. The thing that I would say, since a lot of you are thinking about being contractors at some point sooner or later, is that when I deal with contractors now from the consumer end, if I find someone who's got a lot of integrity and communicates a lot and keeps their word, and has subs like Ray Guerrero, some of you know him. He was a student of mine, and he took this course. This program, and he's a painting contractor. His dad was a painting, but he wanted to learn as much construction as he could. But every sub I get from him is got a lot of integrity, knows what they're doing, and I would just go to him first for that reason. If you're new and your quality's not good, or it takes you a while to get to the quality because you're new, you're young, that's fine. If you have integrity and you are honest with people and you're upfront and you communicate well, they will love you no matter what the product is. You can give them a much less good product because they love you so much, because they're so happy that you're not screwing them or not ignoring them completely. So if you can manage to be open and have a lot of integrity, that covers so much ground. It'll easily cancel out, because you're new. New people make mistakes, and a lot of times they have to renegotiate with consumers. They go, look, this is the first time I did this particular type of bathroom, and there were some things I didn't see ahead of time, and I've really taken a hit on this. Is there any way you could, help me with the contract price? And most times they will. They'll say, yeah, that's reasonable. I can see where you couldn't see that coming.
Do people not trust your contractors?
Do people not trust contractors?
Like, no, do people not trust young contractors? Like,
No. They trust the young contractors, but a young contractor may make more mistakes because they're new at a lot of things they're doing. So they need the client to be, more flexible in some ways. And one way you can do that is to, be close to them in other ways, like communicate a lot with them and, empathize with them and be honest. Say, just say, ask for more money for something. Especially people with a lot of money. Sometimes they're stingy, but sometimes they're great. And they go, yeah, that's not a big deal. Yeah, we'll pay a little bit more for that. That's really the way it should be. Because, I'm amazed that this bathroom I'm working on, some of the guys here worked on it, Dylan and Lewis. It was under a slab, and they took the bathtub and the shower and the vanity sink and they switched them around totally in the room. And so they had to cut a lot of the slab because the plumbing was all under the slab. And they didn't know if the plumbing was going to be good. And part of it was not, it had corroded over the years. This was like a 70s house. No way you could tell that ahead of time. And, the plumbers happened to have a hour material basis. They didn't do a formal bid because there's no way you could tell what was there. So if they did do a bid, and all this unexpected things came up, they could legitimately ask the client, hey, we had no idea that this thing was plumbed this way because it's not the usual way, but this is how your house was. We didn't know until we opened up the slab. So can we put a little contingency price on that? And they'll often say, yeah, of course, you couldn't tell that was going to happen. There are people out there that say, oh no, you made that bid and you got to stick to it. Yeah, there are those people too, and then what the contractor does is short changes them in some other way so he doesn't lose his pants, right? So, it never works out well.
Do you think it's like a better idea to just do time and material when you're first starting off and then wait till you know what you're doing and then do like actual bids?
Well, what I did, whether I was younger or whether I was in a new area of construction, I would set a maximum price. So I would set a maximum price that no matter what happened, the job wouldn't go over that. That puts the client at ease. They say, well, the worst case is it'll cost this much and we're okay with that much. And then you say, then I'll do a time and materials up to that amount. And then you're just, working time and materials and you get to that amount and you're not done, then you have to absorb that. You have to just bite it for that first one. And that's how you learn. I mean, a lot of times you do jobs where you don't make a lot of profit or you actually take a little hit. That's just part of learning the trade. And but that allows you that allows you to inform the client that they're not just going to pay whatever your time and materials ends up, because they know you're new and it could be exorbitant, right? It could take you twice as long to do something as an experienced contractor. So they don't want to pay totally for the inexperience. But if they can afford what you throw out as a max, then you tell them I'll work up to that. And if I finish before that, then I'll only charge you what the time and materials.
Have you ever
So
had
I-
a bonus?
so
you
I've
ever had
done
a bonus
that.
where like they where you thought you were gonna go over, but you went under, and then they just gave you like the extra?
Yeah, and they'll do that too. But actually it's a much more honest and realistic way to do it. And it's only the people that are, because they're gambling, they're saying, well, I think they can, they've told us this amount, let's make them stick to this, And that's fair because that's what the contract process is, but it's not fair, it's legal, but it's not really that fair because, contracting is too complex to really know ahead of time everything you need to know. There's just stuff in the site that's different that you couldn't possibly know.
What's a fair hourly price nowadays for a journeyman contractor who knows everything and is doing all the paperwork and setting things up and is
Well,
on the
if you're a journeyman and well, I mean, if you have a license and you don't have a license, those are different. But I think journeymen are getting paid. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I hate to say it because some of you may be journeymen and not getting the amount. The journeymen were paid $25 an hour for the longest time, but we've passed that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So laborers, the first stage, laborers and apprentices are paid 25 now.
Yeah,
20
right. Yeah, right.
20 to 30 or 40. Sometimes they're paid more. And someone who has a little bit of knowledge should be paid, probably 40 at least. And if you're doing the job, so you've got the responsibility, even if you're not a contractor, you probably should charge 50 or 60, That's just off the top of my head. Jim and I don't know if Jim and Rodney, what they would give you because they hire people. They don't want to make it too high because you might want to work for them at some point. Everybody now, every contractor now costs out their employees at from 75 to 110 because they have overhead, right? They have to pay sometimes health insurance, this and that, workman's comp. So they have overhead with their company. So it's understandable that they would pay a little more than what they would ask for if they were just a carpenter. But if they're charging out 75 to 110, then the rate for a journeyman is going to be a little under that, because he's not paying that stuff.
Is it true if you get your contractor's license, the boss doesn't have to pay like the workman's comp, so you can get like what they would have paid for it, so you can get like a $20, $15 raise if you have your own license?
You mean if your employee has that license?
No, so like let's say I'm working for a general contractor and he pays like $10 an hour for the workman comp. Well, what if I had my own license so that he charges me as a subcontractor and then he doesn't have to pay for the insurance?
Well, yeah. Well, that would depend. If he's a general contractor, he would need you, like maybe he would sub out. It all depends on the setup of the company. If he subs out everything, then you'd have to be a subcontractor to do anything. If he has his own framing crew, say, but he's got a small job on the side and his framing crew's engaged in a bigger job, then he might say, yeah, go ahead and I'll pay you this much because you're going to use your license for a lot of this stuff. Yeah, you could do it that way. But it all depends on the setup of the contractor, what stuff they do in-house and what they sub out. Let's go back.
That's the main reason. That's the main reason I want to get my license, is so that I can get around that workman's comp and get like a $15 raise.
Oh yeah, well yeah, and the other reason is you'll be working for someone else unless you do that. And
I just want to get it just because it's like the thing to do, pretty much.
Well, yeah, because you can work for yourself, so you're going to make more money eventually than working for someone else. And if you work for yourself, if you have a license, then your scope's bigger because they've really cracked down on the maximum amount of dollar value you can do without a license, and it's nothing, So I mean, unless you don't get caught, which so many people don't. But, you know, it just pays to do that. So yeah, it's worth doing. You know, the great thing about a contractor's license is, you know, they have these courses. I mean, we had a course, which we may bring back, but they have courses that, you know, and they're 500 to $1,000, and they promise to pass you, which means they will keep training you. They won't guarantee to pass the test, but they'll keep training you so you will pass the test for that money. So you can just keep going to school until you pass it. And they're really good because it's half trade, which you may know if you've had experience, and then it's half legal, which you won't know because only lawyers know that. So they just teach you that stuff, and then you go in and you can take the test.
Do you have any recommendations? Because I tried to do one in Oxnard, and they were just like a bunch of scammers. And
Yeah.
then I just because
There are a lot of scammers. So I would call the Santa Barbara Contractors Association. And
how do I get in contact with them?
well, look it up. Look up Santa Barbara Contractors Association in the yellow pages, and just ask them. Just there'll be a woman that responds, the head of it, and tell them what you're looking for, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, we have a list of those companies."
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you know, Jim and I don't know if Jim knows because you know, we had that class. What I did for that when I created the class, I bought a couple of programs. Just like look on the internet, and I looked at some that were relatively inexpensive and seemed okay, and then we incorporated those into his class. So he may know of some, but I think the Contractor Association, because they're kind of in charge of quality control and things contracting in town, you know. So yeah. So let's move on. And then I like your questions. I mean, you could all ask these same questions Jack's asking, but let's say do a little more next week. And then, you know, after the final, we'll have time to talk the rest of that class. And those kind of questions will be good. We'll get into things because this is part of the class is you guys find out stuff you need to know in your personal careers. So, okay, so you get the idea of Bill Green, yeah? So the lead checklist is very similar to this. And this is great because they have a checklist like this, but in the notebook, they also have information about each category, what it means. And so you can actually learn a lot about sustainability by reading that. And then they have a third section, which has contractors and people that will do these things or have information, special information about each of these things. So it's a really good thing. I tend to like it better than lead because it's local and it's cheaper than lead. And if it satisfies your marketing, you know, Jim's done a lot of Bill Green homes. You could ask him about how it's helped his marketing. Lead helps the marketing, but leads we'll talk about next week. It's more involved. It costs more money, the training. If architects have it or contractors are lead certified, they'll charge more because they had to pay money to go to school. So it's great for large projects where there's a lot of money involved anyway, like commercial and public buildings, but or huge houses. But for, you know, a middle-class home, I always thought the local equivalent is better, but that's my opinion. Okay, so one last thing. Let's look at those few slides. It's not very long on electrification. What realtors are being told by sustainability advisory groups. So it's not like a scam. They're just trying to make sure they have all the right information to tell their clients. So that would be we didn't take a break, so we'll just do a few minutes of this and then we'll go home. You guys have been real what's the word? Sleepy? No. Patient. There's a lot of information. These are too much information in these classes, but you know, it's easier to give this stuff in person, believe it or not, even though it's the same information. Okay, so do I have the right one? You know, with me, you never know, huh? Oh, yeah. Okay. You guys can all see this, yes?
Sure can.
Why
Yeah.
electrification? So electrification is a new word now. And it's what we're doing. We're making homes and businesses totally electrical. No fossil fuel. Why electrification and what does it mean for your residents, existing single family home clients? Understanding which systems in the home need to be updated and identify ideal situations. Awareness of the health and safety benefits of electrification. That doesn't really matter because by law, we're heading that way anyway. We're going to have to, you know. However, until they make it, which I thought they did last time, but maybe this code, until they make fossil fuel illegal, you can still build houses that use fossil fuel. So they're trying to, it's still voluntary. They're trying to promote people to electrical before it's required because it may be a few more years. So gaining understanding of contractors to work with, rebates, incentives, and financing. So there's a lot of rebates. Part of this infrastructure bill that Biden just passed is, and the next bill that he's hoping to pass has a lot of global warming stuff in it. And that will be money that will go partly to rebates and incentives to electrify, to get off the fossil fuel. So the government's really backing this. And so it'll mean that it'll be cheaper for all of us to do this. The National Association of Realtors recognizes housing and healthier living as an important issue for its members. We don't need to know that. Electrification of buildings, switching from fossil fuels to electricity, use for space heating, water heating, cooking, clothes drying, represents an important strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So there it is in a nutshell. Electrification may be the most important piece of the decarbonization puzzle. Buildings in the US run on multiple fuels to power their needs. The propane and natural gas used for furnaces account for over 40% of the country's greenhouse gas emissions. So if we get rid of propane and natural gas, that's getting rid of almost half of our gas emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. That's a pretty incredible number. So you can see why they're really hot to do this. We don't have a lot of time, you know. This 10 years is the decade to get this stuff done. Okay, so we've been really doing this since 1973 after the first OPEC oil embargo. Most of you weren't alive, but OPEC decided to flex its strength. It's a organization of oil producing states, mostly in the Middle East. And they realized that they had power with being the main suppliers of oil. So so we had an embargo and we didn't get any oil and we couldn't make gasoline. And the gasoline crisis at the pump was unbelievable. People had to wait for hours to get gas. They couldn't get it. They had to go alternate days. It was pretty hairy. So zero emission vertical policy by 2035. So the country's getting ready to declare that vehicles cannot have greenhouse gas emissions after 2035. That's what is it? 14 years? No, 20. Yeah, 14 years. That's not very long. And what about homes? So this has a little bit of, these slides are always great because they have current numbers. So this is greenhouse gases, buildings, 26%. That's a quarter of the thing. Cars, 37%. Cow farts, 9%. I wonder if goats burp and fart too. And industry, 27%. So buildings are big. And then this tells where what's now greenhouse gas emitting fossil fuel, where it goes. Space heating, 44%, not in Santa Barbara, of course, but in the rest of the country where you have to heat in the winter, everybody water heats. That's a fourth of where the energy goes. Clothes washing, 11, dishwashing, 7, cooking, 7. These are all quite a bit smaller. Pool heating, 2%. Wow. Hot tub fuel. Hot tub fuel equals pool heating. There's some kind of social comment there coming on, but we'll skip it for now. So all electric building code, is it coming in 2022 or 2025? One of these that will be there. And no new houses will be able to be other than electrically run. So there it is, writing's on the wall. Why is it important? So the biggest thing is stopping global warming. Far and away, that's enough right now to make all of this worthwhile. But they're adding all kinds of things like, better, it's healthier. And we'll look at that real quick. These are the things you can replace. Induction cooking, that's an electrical cooking stove. Solar and battery storage, controls of things. So you control your lighting when you're not using it, blah, 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 sensors and stuff. Electric dryer, clothes drying, heat pump for heating and cooling, heat pump water heater, and charging your electrical vehicle. So that's what the house of the future will look like. And many houses, I'm trying to get my house to, I'm old, so I've got a little bit of money to, not a lot, to start changing some of this. I can't afford that storage, like I said, God, 20,000, Christ. But little by little, I'm doing it. And next semester, I'll probably bring you guys out here and show you all the stuff I've done because you can see it firsthand. Anybody here have an electric car yet? Or a hybrid even? Yeah, you're all too young and poor. Yeah. I hope they come down. Be great if they make the little quarter-ton pickup electrical. I think they have some already, but I don't think they're as cheap as they need to be. I mean, we need to get the Taliban to drive around in electrical Japanese trucks, you know? Okay, so, obviously air sealing, these are the appliance changes, but obviously air sealing, insulation are huge things, and we spent the whole freaking course. Hey, what's wrong with this fiberglass here, everybody? Question on the last test?
Oh, how it's all
It's not.
smushed in.
It's squished in and it doesn't separate and go to both sides of the wires. So you got this whole back that's until it comes to the front, which is somewhere in here, is just not going to work. Big hole there. Yeah, ducted and unducted heat pumps. So heat pumps are big. Ventilation and filtration, we've talked about that. Heat pump, water heating, induction cooking, power generation, batteries, zero emission vehicles. What is the most important electrical upgrade you think your clients will want in their home? Replacement heat pump, AC and heater. That's pretty simple and not that expensive. Induction cooktops, a little more expensive, but still reasonable. If you need a new stove, then that switch is not bad. Water heater, photovoltaic system, that's probably the most expensive. Health and safety benefits, we don't need to go through that because we've talked about indoor air quality quite a bit. But people, this is a survey. They do a lot of surveys about what clients want who are buying homes. And they want healthy homes, you know. They don't want them so healthy that they have to spend a lot of money. The great thing is, though, it used to be that people that had some kind of disease or condition where they were real sensitive to toxins of various kind, they just had to gut it out, in their homes. But now we can make homes that deal with almost any kind of medical condition, which is really great because it allows those people now to have, to have houses like the rest of us that are nurturing and not poisoning. I think that's been a great thing. Seniors spend most time indoors. Never. Breathing problems, yeah, of course. Children, yeah. Eat and drink more than adults. Yeah, well, that's debatable. I know kids drink more than I do now. Drink and eat. That's cute. Yeah, here's UCLA School of Public Health. Elimination of CO, nitrous oxide, CO2, fine particulate matter, and formaldehyde. Really important for indoor air quality. So we know all that, though. We don't need to go over this again. Kitchen exhaust. The one problem with exhausting really well from the kitchen is that if you live in an Italian or a Hispanic family and you've got great smells from your food drifting into the house, that'll be sucked up by the exhaust system, which is too bad. I know a lot of you are Hispanic in this class, but we have any Italian families represented in this class? Those homes smell really good too. Actually, Asian homes smell. When I was a kid, we had a Chinese family across the street. Whenever I go in their house, God, it smelled great. Always something cooking. Okay. Yeah. Carbon monoxide. See if you have any of these symptoms: headache, dizziness, confusion. Well, that could just be your normal self, but nitrogen dioxide, yeah. So a lot of health risks are obviated by more sustainable home, construction techniques. It's true. All right. I think we're good. Okay. So that's all I got. It's only 8 o'clock. We're doing good. Any last minute questions? You guys never have questions. Jack has questions all throughout, and Alex sometimes, and Lewis. But questions are good. So really try to make next week, because we're going to do the final prep, and that really helps you on the final, as you know. So it will be recorded. And so if you have to work or you have a family emergency, you just can't make it, you always got the recording. It's just about as good as a live class. You can't ask questions of me in it, but otherwise we'll do that. And then we'll talk about career possibilities for those of you who are on the edge of building and maybe want something hybrid, building and something else. I know a lot of you young people are more computer savvy. And so there's a lot of building areas that are combined with computer work now. So that may be an ideal place for you. So we'll look at some of those as well next week, and that'll be the end of our content. And then we'll take the final and talk about it the next week. So Dylan, where's that wood shot from?
My wall. Oh,
Yeah, Dylan's got all these natural scenes. I love it.
no, there.
Oh, there
my
we go.
wall.
Oh yeah, I love that wall. That wall's from his attic. That is so great.
From the roof, but yeah,
The
attic
roof, yeah. No, the sheathing on the roof, huh? That's
yeah.
right.
They didn't
Wow.
have any plywood on it. They just had this
See,
stuff.
See, almost everybody discards roof sheathing. A lot of times it has tar on it, but you said you just flipped it over. But
Yeah, the underside was perfectly fine. Yeah.
no, I know. All that waste. Look at that. It's a great little wall there.
And if you look closely, you can even see the where the rafters sat right there.
The shadow. That's great. That's great. See, you can tell stories from it and teach school from it. That's a much more interesting wall than most of us have.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody good tonight? Is this cold weather bothering anybody else's arthritis besides mine? I guess not. Oh, I love this. I love fall and some parts of winter, but it just does my body in. So my advice is to you, never get old. I've told you that before, but it's really important. And get a good night's sleep and go to work tomorrow. And I will see you all in a week. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All
Thank
right,
you,
guys.
Patrick.
Okay, you're
All right,
welcome. See you all next week.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right, you're welcome. See you guys.